existence.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Tom, and I do audio post, live streams, and videos. Today, we are talking about collaborating within post-production, but specifically with kind of a audio post focus. So we're going to talk about collaborating, no matter if you're a picture editor or a colorist or producer, director, editor, it doesn't really matter. It's a very collaborative process. So there's some personal and professional skills that will really help you succeed in really any career. But specifically the entertainment industry, there are certain skills that will get you closer to the top. And I'm not talking technical skills like, being a whiz with Avid or Isotope or DaVinci. I'm talking just like basic life skills, like personality, your ability to get along with people, how you take notes, your work ethic. So it's going to be a lot less of, hey, let's look at Pro Tools or let's look at DaVinci or let's look at Isotope, and more of like, let's discuss how to be a good collaborator in post-production. So just before we get too deep into stuff, I just want to give a shout out to channel members. This idea for the stream actually comes from Obi Nelson, and he's been a member for a while. And we have our members only Discord. So if you join the channel as a member, you get access to this. You also get some discounts on stuff. And I'm also going to, I think, have members test out this massive dialogue editing bootcamp that I am getting close to being finished with. It has been such a huge undertaking. When I originally started this training course, I thought, it'll probably be like, 2 hours of video and there'll be good, content for people to practice with. It is exploded. And right now I'm on less than 7 out of 10 and I'm at 270 minutes, which is, I'm not great at math, but I think it's at like 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours of video tutorials, like taking you from no dialogue editing skills to being, able to work on high budget with practice, high budget union work. So the course is structured to basically, if you have a little bit of audio post knowledge, it'll get you some really sharp dialogue editing skills in not much time. Or if you're, maybe intermediate or maybe even professional dialogue editor, you can skip a lot of the basic stuff. And there's like titles, so you can easily kind of page through the videos and get to the, more advanced stuff. So it should cover a lot of bases. And I'm really excited to share it, but I've got a couple more lessons to go through here. The Isotope one ended up being 110 minutes, which is wild. So I've got that I'm working on. And somebody's asking about the Discord. You can join the channel. You just click join. It's like a channel membership. I think it's like $2 a month or something. And yeah. And then the other thing is, if you're interested in courses, I just have one for now. I'm almost done with this dialogue editing one, but you can take the audio post module 1, intro to audio post, to kind of get a primer. So this isn't a requirement, but it will help if you're maybe dipping your toes into audio post, or if you're a picture editor or a director, or maybe you're coming from music. A lot of people end up in audio post for music. So it's just a good primer to get you ready for this massive, boot camp, which is super intense. So that's kind of framing the discussion of collaboration, because dialogue editing is one aspect of audio post, but there's a whole bunch of post-production roles that all have to work together in order to finish a project. It's usually not one person. maybe on like super low budget stuff, it's one person, but once you get above a certain threshold, it's a team of people working on something. So we're going to talk about how to be a good collaborator, what you need from your collaborators, and you guys will drive that discussion. So if you're in the chat today, whether you're a member or just somebody watching, please drop a comment of ideas or stuff you want covered. And like I said, you guys direct the stream. So that's kind of how we're going to shape this out. Let's see who we've got. We have Las Cruces, Bulgaria, California, and probably some other countries and places in the chat. So thank you guys. And Paul Jeffries just joined the channel as a member. So thank you for that. Every penny you guys spend, I just put it back into the channel with either, content or gear. I'm actually looking at buying maybe this is embarrassing. I've always wanted a U67, and not that YouTube pays terribly, but it's getting towards the end of the year, and end of the year I always buy gear because I'm trying to, figure out what I need to get for taxes, where, with write-offs. If I do a write-off, it lowers my taxable income. So I'm like eyeballing a U67. Like, I've always wanted one of those. So let's look at our organizational chart here for post-production hierarchy. This is going to be somewhat flexible, and it's also going to change based on where you are. Sometimes in different markets, there's different people. They have different names for things. So I always love learning about that. So if this is different from where you are, please let me know. It's so cool to learn different terms for people's roles and how, like in India, it'll be a different hierarchy than in the US. And even in like the UK, it's maybe a little bit differently. But US, we're talking Hollywood, New York type of productions. This is the hierarchy that we have. At the very top, you have a producer and or director. On TV shows, the executive producer is kind of the big boss, and then the director will direct individual episodes. Great example of that is Star Trek. You had, your showrunner like Rick Berman or Gene Roddenberry, the executive producer, but then Jonathan Frakes, Riker would direct a couple episodes. And I know LeVar Burton, I think, directed some. I'm talking Next Generation, the best Star Trek. And Two-Take Frakes, Jonathan Frakes, he was like a legend in in Star Trek, but also he's directed other stuff. Two-Take Frakes, they called him that because 2 takes, that's it, moving on. It wasn't like, oh, let's get another for safety. So I really like that, what would you call it? Like confidence in your actors and just the directness of like, let's just get what we need, move on. So yeah, at the top, you have an executive producer or director. On a film, this is a little different. The producer is usually, there can be 20 producers, but the executive producer, similar to TV, is the boss. They hire the director. So the director reports to the producer. But I put him at the top because depending on if you're on TV or film, this kind of head honcho is going to be a little different. Or head honcha. It doesn't have to be honcho. We've got a couple other locations in the chat. We've got Nashville and New York. Cool. So underneath the producer, we have a post supervisor. Really, this person, they would kind of be in charge of picture editorial too. I should have connected those two. Let's do this. You have a post supervisor that is collecting all these people and kind of in charge of, what they're doing and who's hired and all that. This person is a great person to have as a friend if you're a supervising sound editor because they'll get you on shows. The producer and director will too, but I mean, it's just good. Like you end up getting relationships with people. On the picture side, you have picture editor, sometimes multiple picture editors. You have assistant editors. You have first assistant, second assistant, and so on and so forth, etc. That's the picture side. You may have a dailies colorist and some other stuff that's kind of involved, but this is like broad strokes, So then on the sound side, which is where I like to focus, because that's my career, you have at the top of the department the supervising sound editor who manages the dialogue, ADR, sound effects, Foley, sometimes a music editor, although this is often its own column here with the music editor, composer, music mixer being kind of separate. Then sometimes you'll have a dialogue supervisor, a sound effects supervisor, a sound designer, an ADR supervisor, and you've got ADR recordist, Foley artist, and then the formatting on this got a little messed up. This music mixer should be tabbed over, which I can't do now, over here. And then all these flow downhill to the re-recording mixers. On the shows I work, the re-recording mixers are not in charge of any of this. They mix the tracks. They work closely with the SSE, the supervising sound editor. They work directly with the producer and or director, but they're not really managing this sound editorial. That's the supervising sound editor. Sometimes the SSE and the re-recording mix are the same person. And so then they get really good control over the tracks, and they also get to mix them. So that's kind of the hierarchy. And yes, and we have in dialogue especially, we have our first assistant sound editor, which is really important. Assistant sound editor. They are the people who wrangle all the media. They are the unsung heroes of the sound department. I mean, they're kind of like the offensive line if you're a football person, or if you're into the other football, non-American football, maybe like the goalie. Yeah, I mean, they do so much work. They do the most work out of anybody on the whole crew because they're dealing with terabytes of data and assemblies and version tracking and time cards and like just a smorgasbord of whatever needs to be done. I mean, they're just the like Swiss Army knife, grunt, infantry on the ground, like in the trenches, running stuff back and forth. So it's a really stressful, hard job. And I have a ton of respect for assistant sound editors. So we've got, Lusaka. That's cool. So this is the hierarchy. And it's, flexible a little bit. Sometimes dialogue and ADR is combined. And you might have multiple supervising sound editors. So that is kind of the overall hierarchy and how things are interconnected. So let's talk about relationships between these different people. The picture editor and, this, especially the assistant editors, if it's a bigger show, they end up interacting with the sound department quite a lot. They end up sending stuff to them, finding, stuff that's missing, or sending production sound, sending new edits for conforms. They're just like, this person and the first assistant sound editor, they're like bosom buddies. Like they're just connected at the hip. A lot of emails back and forth. And so that relationship has to be solid, because if you get picture changes or something doesn't come across with the AAF, that has to be a really strong relationship. Otherwise, people aren't going to get what they need to work on the projects, like EDLs or change lists or any of that stuff. So yeah, and you have mixed tech. Like on the dub stage, you have mixed techs. There used to be like mixed recordists and stuff. So yeah, this isn't like an exhaustive list. It's just kind of a general overview. So let's talk about where you guys are at, and tell me in the chat, like what role you have. And I'll talk about specifically the relationship that, is relevant to your position. From my perspective, I've been a re-recording mixer. I've been a supervising sound editor. Right now, I float between, on indie stuff, supervising sound editor, re-recording mixer, sound effects editor, sound designer. But on bigger budget, union projects, I'm a dialogue editor. So I'm a, cog in the wheel on that stuff. But on indie stuff, I'm way more, like in charge of stuff and having to manage things. So as a supervisor, if you're higher up in this hierarchy, you're up here, or maybe you're a dialogue supervisor, you do end up dealing more with the, above the line people, and then also the post supervisor and the picture editor. So when it comes to people skills and personality, that it can be a little tricky. And there's things that come with working in the entertainment industry that are kind of like personality requirements, or at the very least, they will help you do well. One of those is thick skin. You got to have thick skin. If you get crushed by creative notes, or if you spend hours second guessing, what you said to somebody or what they meant, what the secret meaning was behind how they said something, you're going to be super stressed out. You're going to probably turn to like booze or weed or some other kind of substance, or video games or unhealthy behavior. Maybe you'll be in the gym 6 hours a day. Like, you have to have thick skin to deal with those big shouldered people, the director, producer, post supervisor, the people who are going to bust your chops when things aren't right. And you got to take the punches. That's the other thing. So you have to have thick skin. And then when something bad happens, you have to be able to step up and say, let's fix this, or my bad, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to work extra to fix this. Or here's what I'm going to do to, make this right. You are going to make mistakes. Everybody does. I make big mistakes all the time, but I'm willing to fix them. So if a person wants perfection, they expect that, they're not going to get it from me. They're really not going to get it from anybody. But the ability to take punches and get back up and be positive and be like, yeah, let's tackle this together. That's really important to have. The other thing is listening. It's really easy after you get a couple years of experience to get an ego and get full of yourself. And, well, I'm where I am for a reason. People should really listen to me. Then that leads you to not taking notes. A director or producer will bring something up and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not the right thing to do. Bad attitude, wrong mindset to have. You need to not be a yes man, but be a willing collaborator. And I believe, who was it that, oh man, let me look this up. I'm going to look this up while I talk. It was Mel Brooks. And he had a quote on, okay. It was on the producers. Where is it? It's the, okay. Here's a very, okay. That's that. Okay. Here's a quote. I found it. It was, this is Mel Brooks, who had this trick for dealing with studio notes, which was to just say yes. And here's a quote. He says, I learned one very simple trick. Say yes. Simply say yes. Like Joseph E. Levine on The Producers said, the curly-haired guy, he's funny looking. Fire him. He wanted me to fire Gene Wilder. He's talking about Blazing Saddles. And I said, yeah, he's gone. I'm firing him. And he never did. But the producer forgot. So that type of, it's not really trickery, but it's like, you just be positive and listen to people and make them feel heard and use your judgment. But say yes to stuff. That's a huge, huge thing with collaborating. And you don't always get that from fellow collaborators, but if you do it, then you set a good example for people. So we've got a couple other chats here. Bernice says I was first ASE for the first time. Yeah, it's so hard. I don't think I could handle it. William Henley says I'm a first ASE, but for the dialogue team. Coming near to end of my first major motion picture. Hope you get some swag for that. That's great. OB says I'm audio post Swiss Army knife. If I were to specialize, it'd be dialogue and music re-recording mixer. Okay, we can cover some of that stuff. Yes, and so the backpack engineer says, I haven't had much experience with big budget shows, but the situation locally is usually that one person is the entire sound department. Yes, that is how it is in smaller markets, and it's even how it is in bigger markets with just lower budget productions. So we can talk a little bit about that. If you're a sole, let's start low and then we'll work our way up the budget. If you're a sole proprietor, one-man band, one-woman band, whatever, and you're doing audio posts on something, whether it's a commercial, documentary, feature film, short film, YouTube video, you end up having to wear all these hats. You might even be post supervisor on stuff. But what I always tell people, and you'll see this in all my videos, you'll see this in the courses I'm working on, it's important to wear all of these hats and not skip any of them. And to wear them when you have the hat on, wear that hat and don't switch hats. So if you're doing everything yourself, you're collaborating with yourself. You're collaborating with the producer and probably the picture editor and the director. But treat yourself as a person with multiple personality disorder. Day 1, you're a dialogue editor. Day 2, you're a sound effects editor. Day 3, you're a re-recording mixer. But don't be like, you know what? I don't like dialogue editing. I'm not going to do that. Don't do that. Like, you have to go through all the steps. So if you're doing everything yourself, it is difficult, and you have to compartmentalize your brain and your work to be able to do everything yourself. You still have to do all this work. What ends up happening is it takes longer to do a good job on the process. If you have multiple people, you can parallel your work. You can have all these threads going at the same time, and the work will be done a lot faster. So that's a plus to collaborating. It's even a plus to subcontracting work out. You can take time to live. You can take time to be with your family. You can take time to go fishing. You can take time to go to the casino. You can take on more work. So then it's more of a business question of, do you own a business or do you own a job? For most of us, we own a job. Our income is directly tied to our labor. Once you start hiring collaborators, your income is no longer tied to your labor. It's tied to the value you provide as a manager of processes. So not everybody likes to get to that point. I'm one of them. I like to be hands-on. I've got shakers and guitars right now because I got hired to compose music for something. And I'm trying to find people to help with this stuff. And it's really hard because finding people you trust that will do your quality of work and your style of work is so difficult. I am probably, for channel members, going to be posting some job opportunities on our Discord, our members only Discord, because I went from having getting towards the end of a project, not sure what's going to happen, getting to that slow lull in work, like, what do I do next? I was right there, and bam, 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 4 people hit me up with projects, and they're good paid projects. So it's like, do I pick one and say no to the other? Nope. Give them all to me. I'll take them all. I'll figure it out. I'll schedule things out to where I can checkerboard stuff. I will subcontract, because when you start to bring other people in, they might have skills that supplement your weaknesses. And I try really hard to find people that do that, because I know my weaknesses. I'm not organized. I'm a bull in a china shop. You give me something to work on and I will do a great job on it, but it is going to destroy everything else. Stuff's going to get pushed to the side. I'm not really careful with stuff. I kind of just, like a bulldozer, just plow through things. And so somebody who's very meticulous and detail-oriented is a good match for me, because I'm not. I'm just give me a stick of dynamite to throw at stuff. So find out where your weaknesses are and try to find collaborators, if you are in a management position, that supplement where you're lacking. So let's see. Who else do we got? We got Mike. He says, I'm a one-man audio department, but I do every job, including field mixer. That's great. I love getting out on set. James, we got James. my boy James in the chat. Welcome, James. Great name. Have you ever started audio post early? Happens all the time. And then the conforms happen, and I bill for the conforms. So sure, I'll start on your rough cut. But when you have a fine cut and I have to conform 400 tracks to it, money in the bank, shawty, what you drank. Alex asked, he says, I used to be a cook in a restaurant kitchen, but before that I did every job in the kitchen, which made me a much better leader and collaborator. That's a great topic, Alex, do you need experience? Do you need experience in all of this to be a good supervisor? And I have worked with supervisors who specialized. One of them is a great dialogue editor. She is such a kind person and great dialogue editor. One of my favorite supervisors to work with. I've had, a lot of supervisors who specialized in sound effects. They ended up cutting sound effects on shows, or at least managing a big team. And they can also make great supervisors. Not too many of them are music editors. Every once in a while, you'll get a composer that thinks they can be a supervising sound editor, and they make the worst supervising sound editors because they just want the music to be loud the whole time, and other stuff they don't really understand. It's all about the music. So yeah, not a great career track. But, every once in a while, I'll work with a supervisor who's done all this stuff, and I wouldn't call myself I guess on some projects I am a supervising sound editor, but this is like a super stressful position and I don't generally look for it. But I've done all this stuff. I've made a lot of money doing dialogue. I've made a lot of money doing sound effects, like probably, $500,000 on each of these two things. And I've made a decent amount of money doing ADR. I haven't done a ton of Foley. I've done a little bit. Great story. Let's do story time. I might have told this story before, but it's really funny. So I had moved to Los Angeles and, I had $5,000. That's what I had saved up, working my way through college. No connections in LA, no rich parents, supporting me. I had paid my way with apartments and stuff through college. I paid all my bills for all that stuff. Really tough. I worked like 5 jobs for college, manual labor stuff. I was a ranch hand. I was a DJ. I did so many different things. I was a mechanic. Like I just had to grind my way. It's like, grinding through a video game, save up $5,000, move to LA. So when I get to LA, first thing is not, hey, let's party, let's have a good time. It's like, I need to find work now. And so I was taking everything, whatever you got, I'll take it. So, I was working on all indie stuff, web series were kind of starting out, TV shows, game shows, production sound kit. And I was trying to do post, and I was trying to do music at the same time. So I was just trying everything, just like shotgun approach. So this guy, I forget how I met this guy. He was a UCLA student, I think, he was trying to be a supervising sound editor. So he posted, I think, on Craigslist, I need a Foley artist. And I was like, oh yeah, Foley, that's the footstep thing. So I responded, oh yeah, I can do that. And he's like, well, it's $150 a day, and we've got a Foley stage at UCLA for a day. So can you make it there Wednesday, at 9 a.m. to start? Yeah. And he's like, okay, what kind of shoes and props do you have? I was like, oh shoot, like I was not prepared for this. He's like, well, there's a woman in the scene, and we need heels for a lot of it. So do you have heels? And I was like, dude, I wear size 11 men's. How am I going to find heels for this? So I was like, yeah, man, I got it. Hung up, booked it. He told me where to go exactly at UCLA. And so I went to Goodwill, and I was like, okay, I got to get some dress shoes, and I need the biggest heels. So I went in and was like, where's your shoes? I need the biggest heels you got. And the biggest heel they had was still way too small. It's just not going to work. So I was like, I'll just get them. I'll figure it out. Brought them home. And I was like, do I tape them? No, the tape is going to crinkle. So I took a hacksaw and cut the toes out of those bad boys. And I got, my toes sticking out like 4 inches over the edge, but whatever. I can make the heel toe sound with them. I can sort of keep my balance, and I collect as much stuff as I can. I go to the Foley stage at UCLA. I forget what it was called. And this guy, Danny's there, and he's like, okay, here's the thing. I got all the cues lined up and the beeps, and we're going to get started. So we started off doing, easy stuff. We did like a cloth pass and some props, and then it was time to do the heels. And so I put the heels on, and I'm going from, wood to sand to, not sand, but wood to dirt to concrete and tile and all that. And he's recording with a Sennheiser 416, very directional mic. But after a pass of this like pretty quiet footstep sequence, he gets on the talkback. He's like, there's a problem, dude. I was like, what? Let's fix it. Let's figure out what the problem is. He's like, well, the problem is I can hear your pants, and it's a quiet scene, so we already have the cloth track. I don't want any cloth in this. And I didn't know that Foley artists normally wear like, the girls always wear yoga pants. The guys will wear like sweatpants, stuff that makes no sound at all. So you just get the footsteps. I was wearing like jeans or something stupid. So I was like, all right, well, I didn't bring extra pants. Like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, oh, well, if you don't mind, you could maybe just like take your pants off just for this one take, and then you can put them back on right after. I was like, you know what? I need, I want this to go well. I want to get more work from this guy. Yeah, I'll do it. Took my pants off, and I'm walking around in high heels with like bright red boxers in dark Foley stage, and I'm watching the screen. I'm watching the shoulders, doing the footsteps, and then I hear the door open, and I walk in, and I turn my head, and I look over my left shoulder, and I see the dean of the school leading a tour of students, like 20 students, with the door wide open and everybody looking at me, half naked man in boxers and high heels, tiptoeing around the Foley stage. Heard a gasp. Didn't hear a word after that. I just heard the door slam, and I could see Danny laughing in the control room, because it was so funny and so embarrassing. So yeah, but the collaboration was important to me. That's how to circle it back to this stream. The collaboration was important to me, so I kept going. Swallowed my pride. I got my $150, and then that ended up leading to more work. And what's interesting about those collaborations is that one cheapo Craigslist job you do ends up just spider webbing out into all these other people, because that one good experience, they tell their friend, and then that friend hires you. Now that friend tells another friend. Eventually, you end up stair-stepping your career to where you're working on big projects with people who know, a lot about what they're doing and can actually boost your career up. So people ask me, when they're first starting out, like, what do I do? How do I find work? Take every job you can. You never know where it's going to lead. You never know. So just take the jobs that pay, take the jobs that will pay in experience or money, or both. Really, both is great. If people are paying you to learn, you're in a good spot. But don't be afraid to just gobble up all the work you can, because it's going to lead you to great places. So that's all I can say about that. All right, let's go through some comments here. Sound Mixer Pros asking, anyone have a link to the Discord? If you join the channel as a member, you will get a link. It's like in the welcome message. It should be. If it's not, let me know. Okay, I've recorded my first album as a one-man band. Done everything myself except for mixing and mastering. Yeah, that's great. I mean, even if you're watching this as like a picture editor or a YouTuber, try putting on the hat of all these roles. Don't skip these processes just because you want to get to the finish line. It's really important to go through the motions and do everything the right way. Okay. Have you ever had composers involved in spotting sessions? Spotting sessions, yeah, but more embarrassingly, they come to the mix, and that Oh my goodness. That is like one of my pet peeves is composers. They all want to come to the mix. And every once in a while it's fine, but mostly it's not fine. Mostly it's terrible because they want their music loud. That's the whole reason they come. They just want you to turn their music up. And I have had mostly terrible experiences with composers coming to the final mix or dub, because they're there to vouch for their tracks, and I get it. I have made money composing. I understand that you work so hard on the music and you want it to be heard, but with all of these different responsibilities, really the boss of all these people is the movie. It's the film. That's the main big boss. That everybody reports to the story of the film. So loud music doesn't necessarily make a great film. It actually makes a really hard to listen to film. So I don't like composers coming to the mix. It's like probably one of my least favorite things. It's kind of like black licorice or the dust at the bottom of the cereal box. No, keep them in their little hidey hole, mix studio and their composer den, with their way too loud bass and their no dynamic range and everything's mixed at like -10 average. Yeah, leave them for that. Let me deal with the director and producer on the mix stage and watch your show when it comes out and be happy that I had any of your music in the mix at all. Yeah, good question. Simon says, that's what happened to me from a ridiculous budget project and ended up with a 2-hour, 30-minute feature film. Yeah, those projects are a little tough. Thanks, James, for the super chat. I don't get too many super chats, so when I do, they're actually really super special because I'm not out here like, shilling for stuff and like, oh, I need this and let's get a goal of, $14 Like I'm not really into that stuff. So yeah, I just bumped my camera. Let me fix this. Oh, that's so when I compose, I have like it's kind of a cool setup. I have a studio desk and I'm making this way worse. Give me 1 second, guys. There we go. I have like a keyboard, 88 key. What brand is this? I think it's a KeyStation 88. So you can't really see it, but it's here. It pulls out from my desk. And then I've got the little foot pedals hooked up to it, an expression pedal and a sustain pedal. The expression pedal is great for horns and melody instruments like strings and stuff, but I don't use them most of the time. I compose maybe a month out of the year. And so when I do, I have to like kind of figure out where everything is at and I end up bumping stuff. So sorry about that. Okay. Another question here. You might have answered this before, but why do picture editors get involved in sound edit? Why? Why do they? Okay, so we talked about my first pet peeve of the composer coming to the mix. Second pet peeve is the picture editor coming to the sound mix. And this is going to make a lot of picture editors mad, but do I care? I don't really care. Picture editors think they are great sound designers. They will put the most terrible, low-quality sound effects in their edit. They will make the worst Frankenbites. They will throw things out of sync because they wanted to try a different take. And then they come to the mix and try to give you mix notes. It just chaps my butt, man, when they do that. I had one picture editor. I actually really respect the guy, but he annoyed the crap out of me. And he came to mixes, and I've worked with him on a bunch of different pictures. Sorry, if you know who you are, I'm really sorry to air these grievances publicly. But the first film I worked on with him, it was a horror film, super, super intense sound design, and he had his temp sound effects. When these guys cut in Avid, they have like 12 tracks they give you. And so the first two tracks were dialogue, and then the rest were his great sound effects from like the General series. And we had a full sound team, like multiple sound effects editors, Foley artists, Foley recordists, dialogue editor, everybody, like traditional big crew. And I was also doing sound design. I was supervising. I was the re-recording mixer, and I was also doing sound design. So the bigger scenes where it needed special things, I was recording like analog amps and all kinds of weird gadgets and stuff and making ghost sounds, and like, it was really fun. So he comes to the mix, and we've got all these cool sounds going on that like are really unique. And the first thing he says is, can you go to the temp? And once they say, can you go to the temp, like, it's over. So I listen to the temp, and there's this sound he's added of a bear cub chittering. It was a chittering sound. And he said, yeah, and I really like that sound. And I was like, dude, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like it was recorded on like wire, like a wire recording. Like, that's how lo-fi it is. But he liked the emotion of the sound. And so I was like, all right, well, let's, put it in here. And so I EQ'd it and added some room verbs, so at least bedded into the scene. And then, he was happy with that. So we muted our sound design that I thought was really good. But every time that thing came back, let's try the bear cub. Okay, let's try the bear cub. So that ended up making it to the final mix. But there was other things that he wanted to put in. So here's why I respect him. He vouched for that sound. He obviously, it was like his darling sound design, thing that he did for this. And so we used it. There was other things that he wanted me to, because once that drop comes out of the bucket, it starts to flood. All right, let's check the temp. Okay, then it becomes a thing, like an affectation. Well, let's go to the temp. Let's go to the temp. So I started to push back. I was like, okay, I understand, the bear cub. Yeah, that's great. Good job on the bear cub. These other things, like, they just don't sound good. So please, let's use the sound design that our team of people has worked for weeks to create this atmosphere, because they sound better. And what's interesting is he was there with me during the pre-dubs. So he was, bear cub, let's go to the temp, let's go to the temp. Okay, fine. It's a little weird because the picture editor is not your boss, but they've spent so much time with the director that there's a really strong relationship there. And you come in later in the process, you don't have that yet. So you kind of have to defer to the pecking order of things. So I deferred. Some of the stuff I pushed back on, but generally I deferred because I knew at some point the director was going to come in. So we put a lot of the temp sounds in, and the director comes in day one to start listening to stuff, and we get to like a big sound design sequence, and he hears it and he's like, what the hell is that? And I said, well, that's a temp sound effect that Glenn really wanted. And Glenn wasn't there. Glenn had, I said his name. Shoot. Glenn, yeah, he wasn't there. And he had some other thing to do. So the director was like, well, okay, I understand. I've heard that in the temp, but I want to hear what you guys did. So I was like, okay, thanks. So we listened to the sound design. He's like, that's awesome. Why didn't you use that in the mix? And I told him, well, Glenn really wanted his temp sound design. So we ended up going back through the film and basically taking all of the temp sound back out and putting, which I already pre-mixed the real sound design. So it was easy to just swap it back. We did keep the bear. We kept the bear cub. That stayed in the mix, and it's in the film if you watch it. But pretty much all of the other stuff, we went to the real sound design done by the sound team. Now, I say that disparagingly a little bit, and it irritated me, but here's the thing I learned, and this goes into the collaboration. As annoying as that was for me, why did I push back, and why did it make me internally cringe so hard that I felt I was going to turn inside out? It's an ego-based thing. Well, we're the sound guys. We know better than a picture editor. That was my mindset, We've spent weeks on this. Here's the thing though. Is it actually better? And I would say in, most cases, yeah, the real sound design was better. But there's things where, he was right. The Bear Cub was better. I will give him that. He was totally right about that. And so taking those notes from your collaborators willingly, instead of pushing back, which I pushed back because it was an ego thing. It was also, I wasn't confident in myself. And so it was like a little bit of a gorilla beat your chest, like, oh, sound man, No, be humble. Try stuff. And so what I learned from that is, yes, it's annoying to deal with picture editors, just like it's annoying to deal with composers, but sometimes they steer you in a great direction. And they have spent a lot of time with the film, so you need to respect their input and you need to listen to them. And by not doing that, by pushing back constantly, you're creating a bad work environment. You're creating animosity. These people need to be your friends. You're kind of disrespecting their time put into the film. And you're also getting blinded to serving the film. The film is your boss. Yeah, the producer and director are your boss, but really we're all trying to serve the film. So you're not looking at that. You're looking how to serve yourself by not listening to them and taking their notes. So take the notes. Take the notes. Try the things that people want you to do, even if you think it sounds bad, because in a perfect world, everybody is trying to make the film better. And that's the number one thing you have to remember with any collaboration, is that it's not about you and your skill. It's about the story that's being told, unless you're doing unscripted, and then it's not about any of that stuff. Okay, so yeah, that's that. Backpack engineer, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one who's been overridden by the editor. In my case, the editor was also the director-producer. Yeah, that happens all the time. All right, let's talk more about like technical. We haven't talked too much about technical stuff. We talked about subcontractors. Okay, so for once you start collaborating like this, where you have a lot of people, certain things become very important. And one of those things is like session naming, how you name your sessions, date stamping your sessions, because there's going to be different versions. Try not to name things like version 1, version 2, version 3. I really like putting the date on stuff. I'll just type out, like if I was going to do my short family heirloom, I would do family heirloom. You can also, in TV and I guess in film, it's pretty common to have 2 or 3 letter designators. So FH for family heirloom. Underscore, just because we're all old guys. Let's call this, then I'll do the name of the video file that this session is tied to. So if the version I got is a locked cut, I'll do LC. And because it's not really a locked cut, I'll do the date that way with the year, month. I'll actually type this out. Year, month, day. This helps the in Finder, your file manager, it'll line up correctly if you do the date this way. So the name, project name, the name of the video, the date on the video. Hopefully the video file isn't called like final version. Hopefully it has a date stamp on it. Next, I do what the session is, dialogue edit, for example, or I might call it sound effects, or I might call it BGs, or I might call it ADR with the character's name, Josh, do cut, because then I know it's not a record. It might be a record if it's RX, cut, and then I do the date the session's delivered. So let's do 10, that, 21. So same thing, year, month, day. And then I do my initials at the end. This is a really good, pretty common way to name sessions so that I know what video it goes to, I know what it is, I know the date it was done, and I know who did it. If I have any questions about it, I can go back to them. So this is a really good naming convention to use. And once you get to the point of doing this, you have to have good naming conventions. That is so important. Another thing that happens a lot is these people are remote sometimes. Actually, a lot of the times they're remote. I'm completely remote. And this happens, like people are all over the world. So you have to send files back and forth. Dropbox is good for that. WeTransfer is good for that. Massive MASV is good for big files like footage and stuff. A lot of picture editors and AEs use that. Aspera is another one that people use to send things. You can do FTP. There's so many options. Google Drive. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. There's some security issues with stuff. So you might want to password protect things, but the important thing is getting the files where they need to go. Okay. Covered that. So DaVinci Fairlight exports, I've covered that in some videos with AAFs and timelines and things like that. Pro Tools, the best way to get your stuff to somebody is to do file, save session, copy in, and copy all the audio files. That is the way to go. All the audio files will be copied over. There won't be any referencing. It does create more media, but at least you know it's going to work. Got a couple more comments here. The problem here isn't the editors put bad stuff. The problem is that Montreal, they will mess with the material, and they do this all the time. Like yesterday, I received an AF with all the dialogue squashed, and it was the editor. Oh, man. Would version numbers make sense to indicate rough cut versions? Yeah, but make sure you do like RC for rough cut. Just have the name of the video in your session. That's like that's a big deal. Okay, and then we didn't talk too much about managing. Let's talk about notes, giving and receiving notes. Notes are a part of any collaborative process because the chances of you getting it right on the first pass are very low, even as you're experienced, but especially so starting out. Everybody has a lot to learn. Even people who have been doing it for 40 years. So you need to be able to take notes, which we talked about in the thick skin part of this discussion. You also have to be able to give notes. So the flip side of the coin with thick skin, don't be a jerk when you give notes. Don't do it. It can be so easy to fly off the handle at people when they don't meet your expectations. I have done it, and luckily my mentor was there to publicly chastise and correct me. It's a great career moment where we were reviewing Foley, and I wasn't happy with the Foley. It was too big. My biggest complaint with Foley is that they do stuff too big. You know, they'll be like touching a button on a remote, and it's like, you know, they're slamming stuff together at 100 decibels. And so I called him out on it in front of the crew, and that was the stupidest thing to do. Like, I should have privately pulled him aside and been like, you know, hey, maybe a little less on the performance. But instead, we were reviewing it, and I was like, oh, look, I'm picking up a pencil. And I like slammed my hand on the console. And my mentor, the guy who taught me, you know, really got me started in the industry, immediately called BS and was like, whoa, you know, that's like out of line, and publicly took me down several pegs, which is exactly what I needed. So you have to give notes in a constructive way. Be honest, but don't be a jerk. You know, that's really what it boils down to. You can do the sandwich method, which is where you do a positive, then you do the negative, then you do the another positive. So the negative is sandwiched by positive, but that's a little too like sneaky for me. So I try to just find something I can latch onto that's positive. You know, maybe a dialogue edit I got, they overprocessed it. That would be a really common one. They use too many plugins. So I'll be like, hey, you know, thank you so much. I know you put a ton of time into this dialogue edit. The clip gaining and stuff is really good. The layout is nice. On the next delivery, maybe just back off of your processing 30%. Be specific with your notes. Don't say it's overprocessed. That's destructive. Give them a constructive thing to work on. You know, do this much. Be specific. Give them a measuring stick for things, you know, 20%, 30%. You know, these sound effects could be a lot bigger. They could be punchier. You know, maybe try to find sounds that have more of a transient attack on them, that's a really good note to give. If you're a director and the mix isn't flying for you, then just find something positive to latch onto. Like, hey, I really like all the panning you've done, or the EQ sounds so nice in this scene. And then, hit them with, or I noticed, another thing is I noticed in this scene, this happened. The other thing to do with notes is don't point fingers. Do not point fingers at people. You, make it about you. I had a hard time with this. I couldn't hear that. I was wanting to try this instead of you. As soon as you point the finger at somebody, the armor comes up, they get all defensive and they close up, and you want them to be open to your feedback and your notes. And so being positive with that stuff can really get you a lot further than, throwing your weight around or cracking the whip on people. Don't do that. You want to be a collaborator that is positive and builds people up. And the best supervisors that I work with are so kind. I know they're under so much stress with the projects they're working on, but the way they handle people is very respectful and almost like fatherly or motherly. Like it's a very safe experience, even when you're dealing with, really difficult stuff, really hard notes to do, or impossible deadlines. The best supervisors, the best managers and bosses keep their cool and all that stuff, and they don't take it out on the people that are reporting to them. So make sure you're giving notes positively. Make sure you're taking care of your collaborators, because that is going to pay off on this project, but then the next project as well. So let's see. Any other questions? Have you ever inherited a project or session that was poorly organized and had to get in order before mixing? All the time. That's why I don't hire subcontractors very much. It's pretty rare. I still haven't found somebody who cuts dialogue the way I want. And that's really kind of goes back to why I'm making this class. I would love to, in the Discord, chuck up some dialogue editing things like a doc I need help with, and know that people will follow these steps. So if you take this dialogue editing bootcamp course, you are going to be set up to say, hey, yeah, I'll help you with that. And then we'll get you paid and you can start working on projects. But I haven't found anybody who does it like I do. And so it's really hard for me to trust people with that type of work. Yeah. Riley says being kind goes such a long way on set. Oh man, I told that story about almost getting in a fight. And that was another one of those things where I should have privately told the person my issue instead of saying it in front of people. It's kind of a theme with me, and you'd think I'd be smart enough to learn, but no. Maybe I'm getting a little bit better in my old age. So yeah, being kind, like just don't be a jerk. It doesn't even have to be kind. Just don't be a jerk. That's it. That's like really the key to all this. I'm pretty close to the end of all this stuff. I got my outline here. I'm at the very end of it. Yeah, we've covered so much cool, different topics versus the standard, watching me clean stuff up or edit or mix. So thank you guys. The discussion today has been really useful for guiding the flow of our stream. And, just big thank you to channel members again. When I get busy like I am now, I'm not as active on here, but I mean, this is just like all this discussion has been great. And thank you. Yeah, the channel members are really kind of the fuel for this truck. And the other thing, of course, is my website. So if you want to support me, I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. I don't want you guys to give me money for nothing. I really want you guys to get something. So whether it's discussion or, a course or mix templates or this auto compressor that you've been listening to me through the stream on, or a channel strip, or, any of this stuff, this all helps. It helps me keep doing this because I'm working full time. This is not like, I'm not a YouTuber per se. I'm really a working blue collar sound editor, and I'm doing YouTube as kind of a hobby basically. So it helps me just keep doing it for a little bit longer. On that note, I need ideas for next week's stream. So drop in the chat or on replay, give a comment. If you're a member, go on Discord, tell me what you want to see. There's already one idea I saw, which I think would be good. Talking about field recorder, guide track workflow. I've kind of covered that already, but it's always worth it to come back to. So yeah, I love to hear from you guys. I love all the comments and the discussion and just everything about it. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for tuning into my streams. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for putting up with my long-winded diatribes and BS that I spout out. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next week. Have a good rest of your week. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know what you want me to focus on for my next stream. And somebody did ask about this class, this dialogue editing bootcamp. I'm really hoping, I got all my fingers and toes and arms crossed that I can be done with it this week. So once I'm done with it, I will make sure in Discord to drop a link. I also have a mailing list on my website that you can join. It's called a student list. So people have been asking for this course, and it's, this is how you sign up to get notified about it. So hopefully by, end of this week, Halloween-ish, I will have this dialogue editing bootcamp done. It's going to be massive, like probably 5+ hours of video content, and then simple assignments. And I forgot to say this, you actually get a free practice project. So if you don't have anything to work on for the course that you want to follow along with, you're going to get it. So you'll have your first project or your 10th project, but you'll have material that you can follow along with to sharpen those skills and get them up to speed. So again, thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week. Have a good rest of your week, and words of wisdom to live by for the next week. Collaboration. Make sure you are a willing and positive collaborator in all the stuff you do. And if you do that and you're relatively good at what you do, you will end up having a great career in post-production no matter what you do. So yeah, keep that in mind. I'll see you next week.